The sound of my phone buzzing against the polished oak table made me startle. I glanced down at the screen, another group message from my sister. My fingers tightened around the stem of my water glass, and I felt the soft silk of my blouse bunch under my palm. The view outside my apartment window stretched over the city skyline, glittering like a promise I'd earned the hard way. Yet, even surrounded by my success, a familiar knot of tension settled in my stomach. I had come to this dinner expecting the usual judgments, the sneers thinly masked as family concern. My sister, with her sharp words and even sharper eyes, always had this way of making me feel small, even when the world knew my worth. And tonight was no different, or so I thought. The moment she opened the door, her expression was a mixture of triumph and irritation. "You're late," she said, her tone clipped, eyes darting over my designer jacket, like she was measuring how little I deserved. The irony was not lost on me. Little did she know, I wasn't just late. I had just bought her a house, a $1.2 million dream she'd been chasing for years. The thought made the corner of my mouth twitch into a smile I had to hide. I took a deep breath, feeling the polished wood beneath my hands, the hum of conversation around us, and the subtle scent of her expensive perfume. Tonight, the roles were about to shift, and she had no idea just how far I'd come. I remembered that night like it was etched in my skin. I was younger then, barely out of college, still clinging to the fragile hope that my family would see me for who I really was. Not the mistakes, not the debts, not the failures they loved to whisper about behind closed doors. My sister had that way of striking first, a verbal blade that left me frozen. We had been at a family dinner, a modest gathering compared to tonight's grandeur, and I had arrived with a small promotion for my first job, a glimmer of pride that I hoped she might notice. Instead, she laughed, loud, sharp, dismissive, and pointed at my modest bag. "You think that's impressive? Pathetic." Her words felt heavier than any physical blow. I felt the sting deep in my chest, my hands trembling against the edge of the table. My throat tightened, and I could barely form a sentence. I wanted to defend myself, to show her I was more than the girl she mocked, but the words wouldn't come. Grandma's advice echoed in my mind, her soft, firm voice from when I was a teenager. "Darling, no one can take your value from you. Not words, not jealousy, not even family. Build your life quietly. Let them watch from the sidelines." I remembered the locket she had given me that morning, a tiny silver charm with the word resilience engraved inside. I clutched it now, as if it were a lifeline, a talisman reminding me that I had a choice. That night, after everyone left, I sat alone in my room and made a decision. I would stop seeking approval from those who didn't believe in me. I would leave behind the dismissive laughter, the whispered doubts, and the expectation that I should settle for mediocrity. I promised myself I would rise quietly, strategically, and with purpose. I didn't yet know the full path, but I knew this. I would not be small anymore. And with that promise, I started to plan a life that was entirely my own, one that no one could take away, and one day would give me the power to rewrite every wrong memory, including the one where my own sister thought she could diminish me. The path from that night to where I stand now wasn't simple or kind. I moved to a small, sunlit apartment in the city, a place where no one could track my comings and goings, and I started over with nothing but determination and the locket from Grandma around my neck. My first days were filled with small, quiet victories, landing a freelance project here, a consulting call there, each one a brick in the foundation of the life I was determined to build. I met Clara, a seasoned entrepreneur, at a networking event in a downtown loft. She saw something in me that even I struggled to recognize, a quiet fire that refused to be extinguished. "You're capable of more than you know," she said, handing me her card like a key to a door I hadn't yet realized existed. Under her mentorship, I learned the language of business, contracts, negotiations, marketing strategies. There were nights I stayed up until 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling, doubting every choice. But every time I touched the locket, felt the weight of the word resilience, I remembered Grandma's words and pushed forward. The struggles were real, Clients who doubted me because I was young, colleagues who dismissed my ideas, days when my bank account barely covered rent. I remember sitting on my tiny balcony, coffee in hand, the city lights blurred by a late-night drizzle, telling myself, this is temporary. I am building something permanent. Small victories began to accumulate. My first profitable contract, a modest sum, but proof that I could do this, made me feel invincible in a quiet, unspoken way. Then came the first big client, a project that demanded every ounce of creativity and nerve I possessed. I stayed up nights perfecting proposals, rehearsing presentations, and learning to navigate boardrooms where every glance seemed to question my worth. And I won. That project paid enough to cover my rent for a year, and more importantly, it gave me confidence I hadn't dared to feel. I kept my progress hidden from my family. Social media posts were vague, humble snapshots, a latte on a cafe table, a city skyline, a blurred, office vibes photo. No one could see the empire I was quietly building. I reveled in the irony that the same people who had doubted me, mocked my ambition, or ignored my struggles would never suspect the magnitude of my growth. By the time I bought my first property, it wasn't just a house, it was a statement. Every decision, every risk, every late night had led to that moment. And on that morning, as I signed the papers for a $1.2 million home for my sister, I felt a surge of quiet satisfaction. She had evicted me years ago, underestimating my potential, and now, unbeknownst to her, the very foundation I had laid would become a gift that even she could not ignore. The city around me hummed with life, and I stood in my apartment, locket in hand, knowing the next chapter was about to unfold. Not just my story, but the story of power, recognition, and the perfect moment to reveal it. The evening air was crisp as they arrived, the kind of chill that made you pull your jacket a little tighter, but tonight I felt nothing but calm. My sister, along with a few other family members, stepped into my apartment expecting the familiar scene: modest decor, a woman struggling to make ends meet, and the smug satisfaction of seeing me still small. The irony? I had transformed the space into a reflection of every risk, every late night, and every ounce of grit that had brought me here. The walls were adorned with art that whispered stories of resilience and ambition, abstract pieces that spoke to triumph over struggle, and photographs capturing moments of courage I had lived but never broadcasted. A sleek mahogany desk held neatly organized contracts and letters, subtle trophies of victories quietly won. Plush rugs softened the space, while a carefully chosen lamp bathed the room in warm, inviting light. Every detail was intentional, a testament to the life I had quietly built. My sister's eyes widened the moment she stepped inside. "Wow, this is different," she murmured, clearly caught off guard. She glanced around, attempting to mask her surprise, but the carefully curated elegance of the apartment left her fumbling for words. I watched her, feeling the familiar pang of old wounds, tempered now by a quiet strength. "Different?" I asked, my voice calm, measured, but edged with the satisfaction I had waited years to taste. "I suppose that depends on your perspective." I gestured toward the papers neatly stacked on my desk. "Do you know what this is?" Her gaze flicked nervously to the documents. Work stuff." I smiled softly. "These are contracts, agreements, properties I've acquired over the past few years." "And this," I said, holding up a key, "is the deed to a $1.2 million home. Bought this morning. For you." For a moment, the room was silent, the only sound the faint hum of the city outside. Her mouth opened, closed, words failing her as the realization hit. She had evicted me at a family dinner years ago, believing she was asserting power over someone insignificant. And now, the very person she tried to diminish was holding a gift of unimaginable value, a symbol of triumph she had never anticipated. I watched her face pale, the mix of shock, guilt, and disbelief washing over her. You bought this?"
"For me," she stammered.
I nodded, the quiet authority in my posture impossible to ignore.
"Yes."
"And the reason is simple. I want to show you that life doesn't have to be a battlefield. Opportunities exist, but they are never given. They are earned quietly, with patience and resilience. Her eyes filled with tears, and she looked down, ashamed yet touched. For the first time, the power dynamic shifted. She realized that I had always been stronger than she imagined, not just in wealth, but in heart, mind, and resolve. I let her absorb the truth, watched as the weight of her past actions met the consequences of my silent growth. I could see the disbelief radiating from the others too. Their old assumptions about me crumbled like dry leaves, and I held my ground, poised, calm, and radiant in my success. This was the moment I had envisioned, the one where the story of my quiet perseverance finally demanded acknowledgement. The room was heavy with tension, yet I felt an unexpected calm. For years, I had carried the sting of judgment, the echo of harsh words, and the weight of being underestimated. Now the balance had shifted. I had the upper hand, not just financially, but emotionally, morally, and strategically. I could choose to punish, to gloat, or to extend a hand. I chose the latter, but on my terms. I turned to my sister first, her eyes still wide with disbelief. "I'm giving you this house," I said slowly, letting each word land like deliberate steps. "But it comes with conditions." She blinked, confusion flickering across her face. "You must commit to your own growth. Pursue the dreams you've ignored, not the ones I or anyone else dictated. No more belittling others to feel strong. This is your chance to live authentically." She nodded, swallowing hard, the weight of my words settling in. "And that includes," I continued, "taking responsibility for the choices you've made. Apologize where it's necessary, not for show, but from the heart. Use this opportunity to transform, not to resent." The other family members shifted uncomfortably, sensing that this was no ordinary gift. I addressed them one by one, each condition tailored to their personal journey. Uncle Mark, who had often ridiculed my ambitions, needed to invest in someone else's success rather than crushing it. Cousin Lily, prone to gossip and comparison, would focus on her own talents, learning to celebrate rather than diminish. Every stipulation was a reflection of the lessons I had learned the hard way: resilience, self-respect, patience, and humility. I could see the mixture of relief, shame, and hope in their faces. My calm authority left no room for negotiation. I wasn't exacting revenge. I was guiding them toward growth, toward the potential that had always been there but remained dormant under fear and ego. Compassion, I realized, was my most powerful tool. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't petty. I was deliberate. I had endured. I had struggled. I had risen. And now, I was extending the same chance to those who had once sought to diminish me. But make no mistake, their journey was their own. I would not carry their baggage, I would not dilute my boundaries, and I would not allow history to repeat itself. As I handed over the signed deeds, I felt a quiet triumph. The house was more than bricks and mortar. It was a bridge. A bridge from past pain to future opportunity. A bridge that connected compassion with accountability. And as they accepted the keys, I knew they understood. This was not just a gift. It was a lesson, a mirror, a reckoning, and a chance for redemption, all wrapped in one. For the first time in years, the weight of past conflicts lifted. The power had shifted, and for the first time, I felt fully in control of my narrative, my legacy, and my heart. Days passed after the dinner, and I watched quietly as change began to ripple through my family. My sister called me one morning, her voice softer, almost hesitant. "I've been thinking about what you said," she admitted. "I want to do better. I don't want to keep hurting people or myself." Relief and pride washed over me. The sister, who had once evicted me at dinner, was now embracing growth, taking the first steps toward authenticity. Uncle Mark sent an email the following week, thanking me for the opportunity to mentor a young entrepreneur. Cousin Lily shared her first personal art exhibit, a project she had neglected for years. Slowly, the people who had once underestimated me began to honor the potential I had always believed existed in them, and in myself. I spent a quiet evening on my balcony, the city lights shimmering below like scattered stars. I held the locket from Grandma between my fingers, feeling the engraved word resilience under my touch. It had guided me through every struggle, every doubt, every late-night decision when no one else was watching. That small charm had been the catalyst for this life, the life I had fought for, the life I had built in silence, and the life I was now sharing with others on my own terms. I reflected on the journey, the sting of humiliation, the nights of uncertainty, the long climb toward independence. Every setback had been a teacher, every sneer an opportunity to grow stronger. And here I was, not only financially secure but emotionally whole, empowered, and unafraid to show my family the strength I had cultivated quietly over the years. The house keys rested on my desk, a tangible symbol of triumph, compassion, and accountability. It was more than a gift. It was a statement, a reminder that resilience, patience, and vision could turn even the deepest wounds into bridges of possibility. I took a deep breath, savoring the cool night air and the quiet sense of closure. I had rewritten the narrative. I had transformed pain into power. And I knew, as I looked out over the city I had claimed as my own, that this was only the beginning of my story, not its end. With a soft smile, I whispered to myself, a final affirmation of all I had endured and all I had become. I am enough. I am strong. I am free.